I've been able to be much more creative in terms of what I do and how I do it. Um, and consequently, there's been a lot of growth professionally. Um, and the other thing about being a tutor, what I found is I get much more positive feedback than I do as a tutor than I did as a teacher in school. And I have to say this because in school it was always like they felt they had to give you a point to improve. As a tutor, people aren't necessarily doing that. They're going, "Oh, we're very impressed by your work." And I've had so many people say that to me. And I'm not just talking about parents and students, I'm talking about external agencies that maybe I've done work for. So there's been a lot of growth and a lot of faith in myself and what I'm doing, and a lot of trust in myself because of it. Um, I've also kind of attributed other things, so partly about students, but also partly about myself in terms of how I'm working with them. So the blue, I debated whether blue or green was knowledge and understanding and the other way around, but I've actually gone blue with knowledge. So the knowing something comes from reflecting on it. But understanding, which I put with the green, was for growth. So we can learn something and know it, but the real growth comes when it goes from here to here and we grow. And that's true for me as well as the students, I think. And also expression. So creativity is a way of expressing what you know and understand, and it shows your growth, and it's the same for the students. So one of the areas I'm working with students is, yeah, you know this, you understand this. Now we need to make sure you can express it accurately so that can translate into the grades that they're trying to get, which is why they're working with me in the first place. So there we go. There may be a lot more in that than even I know, but that's my 15 minutes worth.
That was absolutely yum. Gemma, what responses or questions do you have?
I love that. That's all I got. I think that's beautiful.
I'm really curious about the shapes. I love how organic those shapes are and how they are so balanced. I was looking to see initially whether there was like, knowledge was a bigger circle than creativity. And it's not. It's not. They're really balanced. There was a real sense of wholeness. And the fact that the student landed in the middle is so lovely, isn't it? Because it didn't have to. You'd say theoretically you'd want the student to land in the middle, but it doesn't always. I think that was gorgeous. I was struck by expression sitting between creativity and knowledge because of that sort of productive sort of like, it's sort of the self-expression of your knowledge and of your creativity, which I think is beautiful. Emma said in the chat that she likes the relaxed element of the shapes, and that makes me think of Emma. Am I allowed to share the screenshot of the photo that you just sent me? Emma's done a lovely, thank you. Emma's done a lovely creation that is I have to unblur now, don't I? um, Jenna, would you mind reading what Emma says whilst I'm trying to do that?
Scroll down. Can't work out how to get the image here. Like a learning wall, builds on prior learning and builds up. Purple is the student's knowledge. Green is me helping them to fill gaps and building a more stable wall, catching them when they feel like they are falling. Learning isn't linear, so the wall isn't square. Purple, brand colors, but also the sense of calm. Green for growth and progress, also the growth of me. I love that.
You did it. You did it.
That's
You didn't feel like
amazing,
it,
Anna.
but you did it. So this is a digital drawing, is it? Jenna, is it the kind of tool that you were using as well? Emma, what tool did you do this on?
It isn't quite focusing.
I know.
Is it on WhatsApp?
It is.
Have you
Yeah,
got
I was just going to say,
Oh, love it.
share
Look,
it
your
to.
tablet's whiteboard. Okay. Yeah, when you're right, you're right. Thank you so much. Let me do that.
Your
Oh,
tablet's
come
fine.
on, the brain. Okay, here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. And I feel like this is wonky and I didn't know how to turn it around right now, but that's what we're seeing. So the reason why I asked that, and I think I've answered the question, is that you did manually do the squiggles yourself, right? Even though it was a digital drawing, it wasn't dragging and dropping blocks. They're more manually created than that. Is that right?
She said yes.
Okay. Am I sharing?
No.
Are you kidding? Okay, hold on. Wow, the brain's on the go slow. Okay, hold on. I keep saying that. Um, so I'm going to give this just another moment because it's well worth it. This is what
Oh,
this is what Emma sent to us. The wrong way around. Am I sharing screen now?
yes.
Great. Okay. So
I
Emma, are
love
you
it.
able to answer that question about you physically colored in these blocks? I like that they're double blocks as well. They're not single. Oh, look, there's some singles here. I love the idea about the it's not linear, and I love how even some wonky little blocks have gone in there. There's been a response in the chat, so that means that Jenna's also correct. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So are there any additional reflections, Margaret Mary, Jenna, that you'd like to share with Emma?
I think that it's quite apt.
Go on.
I don't know. It just, my brain went in a similar direction, I guess.
Okay, so show us yours, Jenna.
I don't have much to show because watercolor is a bit of a slower medium. So I've just got, oh, it's not showing up.
No,
I
it
did
is.
a little bit of an underdrawing, and then I don't have all of my art stuff unpacked yet, it turns out. So I don't have my big brushes. So the
Took
splodges
a
are
while.
because I tried to use some tissue to help make it easier. And my dragon machine isn't drying it fast enough, so I couldn't do the top layer. But I kind of, when I was thinking about it, I was like, the first image that popped into my head when I don't think we'd finished reading the whole like instruction even was something that I've thought about previously doing as an art piece, and what I actually bought that canvas for, which is a bookshelf. So kind of going with that stacking of, I suppose, oblongs in my case, and that's kind of the direction I was going in
Tell me more.
of the different components and how they link together, and how, like, the reason I did an under, like, a base color for the whole thing was the idea is that you then paint your painting over the top of it and ignore it. First of all, you're not going from a blank page, but also the idea of it being a sepia warm tone that links all of the different things together, that kind of creates that integration and cohesion, because there isn't a beginning and an end, there isn't a hierarchy of these components, and there isn't like, it's going to look different all the time, even for the same kind of young person or the same kinds of sessions. It's always going to be an evolving balance, and there's no real right or wrong when it comes to that, as long as you kind of got a balance and it's what works and what's needed at that time.
It seems to me that what you've painted is your foundations, and that actually that that work that you just did, that you spent 15 minutes doing and finding the right way to do and finding hacks to do and wishing that you had the right tools to do, all of that was spending time creating your culture. And that idea that you just said about, and with every student it's different, that's because you are the same. That's because
Yeah.
you, as your culture, the basis. We were
And you
talking.
have to prepare the canvas. You can't just paint straight onto a canvas, because the canvas is going to warp and go weird. And so you have to do, you do a base layer of water, clear, transparent, and like really fluid. And if we are going to like psychoanalyze it, going down that direction, you do, for anything that you do have to just start by understanding what's already there and making that relationship and that connection and that understanding and really getting a feel for it before you can even lay foundations.
Yeah.
And that takes as long as it takes, right?
Yeah.
As much as we can use tools like I've got my fan or my hairdryer or whatever to help dry, first of all, that in itself can make it warp and dry too quickly. But also there's no changing that weighting and that, maturation that needs to happen and all of that.
Something else that occurred to me there, Margaret Mary, I'm coming to you in a second to hear your reflections, was when your student is drawn on top, either they draw themselves or you draw them, or a session happens or whatever it is, learning is, added on top. The gaps will not be white, they will be sepia.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite interesting as a sort of, you're there, you're creating that basis. Margaret Mary, what are your thoughts?
First of all, on Emma's one, what I noticed was she used different purples and different ones, with different dips to them. And I kind of thought, yeah, because not all students are coming with the same depth of learning or understanding. And so they're not all uniform. And even in terms of the progress they make is not all uniform either. With Jenna's one, I like the smudginess of it, because there were no clear lines. And I think that's true. Because even if you've got a student coming to you that has dyslexia, their dyslexia, you might have some ideas about what dyslexia looks like and strategies to cope with it, but to help the student learn. But their dyslexia, the way it expresses itself and manifests itself, is different from someone else's. So it's not a clear line. You can't just go in with, oh, they have this. If I do this, then they're going to learn, because it might be dyslexia and you might have an idea of what the properties of dyslexia are like. But for that young student, it's not necessarily going to fit the lines or the shapes, the clear shapes that you have in your mind.
Yes.
And I like the smudginess of what Jenna was doing. But
in my mind, it's almost like Jenna's square is one of Emma's boxes.
Yes.
I really like that, actually.
Now
I'm going to have to do a whole wall of paintings.
all of them.
Awesome. Don't forget some Celtic knots in there. Do you want to see mine?
Yeah.
So I opened the notebook and I found too many of my children's drawings. That's to me, and I was at risk of showing you all of them as well, so it's going to be distracting to you. So I tore the paper out, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I've got two sides. Okay, so this is not my tutoring, this is qualified tutor. And it's dynamic and it's busy and it's confused and it's delightful and it's all the things. And every time I turned the page, I gave myself a little arrow, because that felt like a sort of intentional move. And it turned out that this is my home life. And what's actually happened here is that these shapes have seeped through from the other side. And so I gave them a little yellow outline and made them intentional in a sort of wabi-sabi kind of way. As you can see, my husband is the backbone, and the container for this mad home of mine. And these little pink squiggles, it turned out that I had done 5 of them. So they turned into my 5 kids, and each one had their own sort of interplay between me and my husband, and dots or squiggles, or how messy they were and how overlapping, how much space they take and all of that. And I know that that wasn't the brief, except it is so important to understand what working at home looks and feels like. And how, I mean, this building site situation is no joke. People are banging and drilling and pulling walls out from under me constantly at the moment. And I need to make decisions about it. So that sort of working from home, big, busy life thing feels a joy and feels overwhelming. And this sort of let me feel a bit of ownership over it, which was a lovely feeling. What are your thoughts?
I kind of feel like if you had the time to keep going, you'd get some of that seat back the other way as well.
Yeah, yeah, because that's interesting. It didn't do that. I know
Yeah,
that process is organic. I didn't know what was and what wasn't.
yeah. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's very, very reflective of life, of your life right now.
Mm.
I think your qualified tutor one looks like one of the spirals on my Triskelly.
Yeah, it does.
What are the other two? It does.
Yeah.
That looks like my part of my Triskelly. So what are your other two? That's my question. What are
Oh,
the other
what's
two?
going on over here and over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you could still do all those three and do them all double-sided too.
Yeah, because we don't have enough going on. So basically, you've given me homework. Okay, we've got 8 minutes here. Emma, you need to give us the answer in the chat, and I would love to hear your reflections on my double-sided mayhem on the chat as well, if you wanted. So the question is, when I was preparing this session, I wasn't going to do an activity. I was going to discuss creativity, which we have done before here. And then I thought, enough with the talking. Let's do some doing. So, what are your key takeaways from this session?
To do more art.
Why?
I think art itself is a really interesting activity. It forces you to stop and to wait and to kind of have things take its time. And I mean, for me, it doesn't matter what I'm doing the art for, whether it's the doodles I was doing yesterday because I couldn't find the words. Oh, don't know if that shows up. And I couldn't find the images that I wanted to talk about on Google quick enough, so I drew it. But there's always like an element of pressure, and I know that that's pressure that I've put on myself around art and what it means to be good at art and everything. And one of the things that I learned in art therapy was that the best art happens when you make that pressure go away, or you manage to embrace that pressure and just kind of go with it and find some freedom in it, even if it's coming from a place of really deliberate reflection. Even if you plan it beforehand, you can't control your medium. Like, there are very, very few media that you can control like that, and even then, the only reason you can control it is because you have built that relationship and understanding of that medium. And I think that taking that time to just chill out a little bit, even like really fast-paced media, is still like, it's still immersive. It's still, for me, it's something different. Even though a lot of what I do is very creative, it's a different kind of creativity, and it's for me.
Can I tell you some of the things I heard?
Mm.
One is the focus on the process. When you said it takes time, and I'm trying to think about how to relate this back to the way that you work with a student, teaching them that it takes time, and removing the pressure of the exam grade and focusing on what you have to do, baby steps in a granular way to get there, feels very relevant. There was something about holding space as well, wasn't there? Something about the shape of the art making you just drop everything and be there. And I think that's why
Kind
I
of like,
asked.
you know, sometimes we focus on productivity. It's almost like it's a way of giving yourself that, not just permission, but that protected space and time to not do those things, to just take a breath and be for a minute.
It makes me want to shout, like, why doesn't life look like that and a little bit of the other thing? Why do we have to carve out time for this?
Yeah.
This is what life should feel like. Margaret Mary, what are your thoughts?
I suppose I'm thinking about fear, and I'm thinking about it doesn't have to be perfect. It does. My paintings, I take the time and I measure them out, and they take hours and hours and hours to do. This one I just drew freehand, and it was very relaxed, and I wasn't worried about making it perfect, just communicating what it was I was trying to say. And again with students, there's a fear And I think partly if I talk about when I was doing art in school as a little kid, I wasn't very good at it. So I think I started off by saying to you, I'm not really an artist
Yeah.
because we're educated to, you can't do this, A for effort, C for that for your artwork. So I think my main thing, it doesn't have to be perfect. And it's one thing I'm saying to my students all the time, you just putting drips of water in a bucket. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get the next drop, the next drop. And I think I'm actually quite pleased with myself that I didn't get fearful when you said this. I thought, okay, 15 minutes. Not much I can do in 15 minutes. And I go with what I know and what I think and allow it to speak. And
Totally.
that's what I've taken away. Doesn't have to be perfect.
You've definitely resonated with Emma in the chat, who says that she's too much of a perfectionist for art. And we will challenge you and remind you that creativity is about beauty, not perfection. But also, we want our young people to grow up to be thriving humans, which is not the same as being productive humans, or the same as being rich humans, or the same as being academically successful humans. And the space that we tapped into just now, which can be accessed in other ways as well, through music, through dance, through conversation, through friendship, through gardening, through lots of things. But anything that takes us into that space has got to be realer and more important than any of this stuff, problems that we solve all day. And this is where I'm going. Let's try to remember what the purpose of it all is. The purpose of school is not school. The purpose of education is not education. The purpose of learning might be learning, but that's a different question. But I really, really feel that if we can let this beautiful feeling overflow onto our students this week, what an awesome achievement. So thank you for your time. Thanks, Margaret Mary. Thanks, Jenna. Thank you, Emma. You are brave, brave, brave. And I will see you here next week. I will not be bringing my tambourine, but there might be one in the future. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Feel better, Jenna.